Welcome back to Breakfast Central on a Tuesday morning. We're saying welcome back because we are indeed back for another day of stories and, of course, looking at the key and major news that's making the headlines every single day. It feels good as well to have Osauge back again here on Breakfast Central after a long absence. And
just 2 weeks actually. It was just 2 weeks. No, not that long.
Looked like 2 months.
Could be long. I wish it was, up to 2 months. You know that thing where people say, "Oh, it feels good to be back."
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say it. Anyway, great to have you join us this morning for the next 2 hours. As always, we have the biggest conversations happening in Nigeria, of course, in current affairs and in other regards. And we hope that you enjoy these conversations with us. Remember, the phone lines will be open at some point, so you could also be a part of it. Share your thoughts with us on some of these things we're talking about across the country. You could also join us on our social media platforms at News Central TV. We also have Adebola Adeduba, who's joining us to bring us breakfast headlines. Good morning, Adebola.
Good morning, Osauge. Wow, it's good to have you back. How was your leave?
Well, it was good. It was very restful. And I think I got as much rest as I
you look refreshed.
It shows.
You look really refreshed.
I struggled with, figuring out things this morning, like how to wear a tie, how to button the shirt, and I think, the shirt it struggled to wear it even this morning because it's been so long. What do these things do?
Joe, good morning to you as well.
Say that again?
I was saying good morning to Joe.
Good morning to you, Adebola. I mean, it feels good to be back on the air as well.
Really?
Just yesterday we were talking alongside Ole, but Osauge is back now. So I think we should pass the bulk of the conversation to Osauge.
Yes.
Possibly, if possible, put him on the spot as well. I'm sure. Anyway, I don't know, but the question I want to ask is, when you go off for being a journalist, a TV broadcaster, when you leave the scene for a while, do you still feast and feed on news? I think that's a question I'd like to know. Let me start with
It depends. It depends on. Personally, no. But of course, you can't completely remove yourself from Nigerian news and Nigerian stories. It's a part of your life already. As a journalist, it's already a part of your life. What you do instead is remove the emotional connection you have to these stories as much as you can, because you're no longer. At least for that period, you're not going to be actively discussing them. So. You try, because at that, if you're on leave, you're meant to be resting. So you take away a little bit of the emotional connection you have with those stories and you really just try to rest. But, it doesn't happen for so long.
The same for you.
The realities of those stories would always hit hard.
Yeah, well, for me, the first thing I do is to declutter. Being in the space of always breaking the news, reading the news, at times takes an emotional toll on you without even you being aware of it. So first thing I do when I'm off, the screen or off, my job is to just declutter, switch off all phones, no news, at least for the first 2 days. Thereafter,
Absolutely.
then, I can then, resume back, keeping tabs with the news, what's making waves, just to ensure that I am in touch with stories happening.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, good to be back. Let me say that. Let's quickly share with our viewers this morning what our top stories are. And then, of course, we'll come back with breakfast headlines. Yes, the Kano State Governor calls for reopening of land borders.
We'll also look at the story where SANU and NASU have declared 7-day strike. It's a warning strike over withheld salaries from 2022.
Also this morning, bandits demand, this is of course record-breaking, 40 trillion naira ransom for 16 abducted Kaduna residents.
We'll look at the newspaper front pages this morning. That will be in the second hour. So why don't you just stay with us? Let's go straight to breakfast headlines.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines here on News Central TV. I am Adebola Adeduba. We begin in West Africa, where the Nigerian Senate has inaugurated an ad hoc committee to probe the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari over the 30 trillion naira ways and means advances from the Central Bank of Nigeria, which was approved by the 9th National Assembly. The National Assembly is probing ways and means through which the current economic hardship came to be, and ascertain why citizens have been plunged into crippling deprivation. Meanwhile, Senator Abdul Ninge, who represents Bauchi Central Senatorial District in the National Assembly, has clarified that he never suggested that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is implementing two budgets or that he was biased against the North. The chairman of the Northern Senators Forum, however, said he's ready to carry his cross, even if it means suspension from the Red Chamber. President Bola Tinubu is set to launch the student loan scheme on March 14th, and special advisor to the president on media, Jirin Galale, who made this known, emphasized the significance of the National Student Loan Scheme. He described it as a crucial step towards alleviating financial burdens for Nigerian families and young people during challenging times. In the meantime, Director General of the National Pension Commission, Aisha Dahiru Umar, has denied claims that the Commission lent 10 trillion naira to the federal government. This comes after the House of Representatives passed a motion in October tasking its Committee on Pensions to recover alleged borrowed pension funds totaling 10 trillion naira. In the east of the continent, representatives from Ethiopia's federal government and the Tigray regional state have started talks in Addis Ababa to end delays in implementing the Pretoria Peace Agreement. The deal brokered between the two parties and signed in South Africa in November 2022 aims to bring stability to the region after the conflict between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the federal government that started in November 2020. Authorities in Uganda have halted the recent ban on meat sales in the capital, Kampala, following an outbreak of foot and mouth disease. Minister for Kampala City and Metropolitan Affairs, Minsa Kabanda, said the ban had been halted while the government assesses the impact of the disease in the capital. The minister also urged the public to ensure animals undergo testing before slaughter to prevent further spread. In Central Africa, tensions rose within Burundi's main opposition party as a faction announced the expulsion of its leader, Agathon Rwasa, citing his failure to unite the party's two factions. At a General Assembly held in the northern part of the country, party sources and witnesses confirmed Rwasa's removal as the head of the suspended National Freedom Council. In the north of the continent, the leaders of Libya's rival government have agreed to establish a unified government, marking a crucial step towards resolving the country's prolonged political deadlock. The agreement was announced in a joint statement on Sunday, following talks held in Cairo, Egypt, facilitated by Arab League Secretary General Hamad Abdul Gates. And that's a wrap on Breakfast Headlines. It's back to Osaoge and Joe.
All right. Thank you very much. Interesting stories there, of course, especially the first one with the claims of interrogating or investigating the former government, the previous government, of course, the Muhammadu Buhari administration. And I know that every single person, including the person who even wrote that story, doesn't believe it. But, you know, welcome to Nigeria. I don't expect that it would happen. Nobody expects that it would happen. I think there's so much, you know, that maybe we need to, you know, to of course involve our time and energy into, instead of these, you know, thought-provoking stories.
And don't forget that is the, anyway, Debola, go ahead. I mean, your thoughts on that.
Well, yes. I mean, let's hope this time around investigations will indeed be carried out, and then those found culpable will be brought to book. I understand your skepticism, you know, Osag, when you talk about, you know, investigations here and there, and then nothing seems to be done at the end of the day. I'm hoping this time around they will actually carry out thorough investigations, and then those found, you know, culprits are actually, you know, brought to face, you know, the wrath of the law.
Hopefully. I just want to mention here that just yesterday, the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, said that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is the current president, is doing fantastically well. That Nigeria is a difficult country to rule. And he gave kudos to the president. Aside that, nobody has said anything concerning Better Edu and that case. We do recall that a panel was set up. But before the panel was set up, the EFCC had gone in to investigate. It's been more than 60 days. Up until now, no single word has been heard. So I get where, the worries come from as well.
I have concerns and reservations as to, the statement that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is doing fantastically well. What are the yardsticks used to measure fantastically well in terms of his presidency? We're grappling with insecurity every day. Recently, figures tells us that in this month alone, we have over 300 abducted PPUs in northern Nigeria, Kano, Katsina, and Sokoto. We have escalating prices of goods and services. Gas has gone up in price. We have, inflation, food inflation at 35%. I mean, when you say someone is doing fantastically well, what are the measures? What are the yardstick, you're using to measure if a president is actually ruling well or governing well a particular country? So I have reservations as to that remark by the former president, to the new president, which is Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
It sounds very much like
I'm sure a lot of Nigerians, would have reservations about that.
It sounds very much like when two students go check their results on the result board in university, and they both scored an F. And then, one says to the other one, it was a tough course, and that lecture is very, 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 very difficult. A lot of people even struggle with the course self. So, no big deal. That's what it sounds like. Because,
apologies, Osage, just to butt in there. So, late last month, a fairly, good to go size of a tuber of yam used to go for 1,200. Right now, it goes for 2,000. A derica of rice, which I used to purchase, goes for about, let's say, 1,200, is now amounting, for 1,500. So you're having continuous escalation in prices of goods and services, and then one person is saying the presidency is doing fantastically well. What an irony.
Yeah, well. We'll continue to explore these stories. Good thing you've, of course, mentioned, you've asked the question, what is the yardstick with which we measure, performance of governance? I know I have asked that before when people talk about, government delivering on its mandate or, or is doing well, like the former president is saying. What yardstick do we use to measure? And, of course, it would be really, funny enough, it would not be surprising if President Muhammadu Buhari believes that he did exceptionally well. I would not be surprised that within himself, he believes that he did so well that Nigerians need to applaud him. But of course, it's Nigeria. We'll see you again at 9. Thanks for stopping by and for sharing those stories with us.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. All right, stay with us this morning. Remember to be part of the conversation. If you believe that the current administration is doing well, just like former President Muhammadu Buhari has said, let us know, your thoughts. And of course, if you agree with him, and what yardsticks you use to measure. Or do you also believe that Nigeria is a difficult place to govern? And so, you shouldn't blame the current administration for what the citizens are currently dealing with. Share your thoughts with us. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we're moving into our top stories this morning.
Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Well, the Bayelsa State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal has stepped down a motion filed by the candidate of the nation's ruling All Progressives Congress, Timipre Sylva, calling on members of the tribunal overseeing his petition to recuse themselves from the case. Sylva is accusing the tribunal members of lacking the ability to deliver a fair judgment and do justice to his case. However, in the ruling on Monday, the chairman of the tribunal informed those present that the Court of Appeal has mandated the case to go on, And of course, our reporter Marvelous Ogbomanu covers this entire scenario and shares in this report.
Petitioner in the disputed Bayelsa State Governorship election, Timipre Sylva, is calling for a reconstitution of a fresh panel over claims that he might not get justice from the tribunal. Sylva says he suspects he might not get a fair hearing. However, the defendant, Governor Doyedire, thinks the opposite, as he reaffirmed his trust in the judiciary, saying he is not deterred by the seeming distractions of the petitioners.
Filed one motion. Yes, very useless motion.
I just want to state that I have confidence in the judiciary and that I know that that is the last hope of the common man, and I know that they will give justice. So we have confidence in the Nigerian judicial system.
Ever since the Bayelsa State Governorship Petition Tribunal started, this is the first time the defendant in the case, the Executive Governor of Bayelsa State, Doyedere, is coming to court to witness the proceeding. But the petitioner in this case, Timipre Sylva, is calling on the Court of Appeal to disband the tribunal, saying he does not have faith in them. But the motion was rejected, and this means that the tribunal will continue presiding over the case.
The application just taken today was to the fact that the petitioners, which is our client, they are not satisfied with the record of the proceeding, and that's why they filed the application.
They had earlier written to the Court of Appeal President asking for disbandment of the panel which petition failed. And notwithstanding that, they now brought another motion. And these are petitioners who should want this matter to end expeditiously. But they brought another motion asking for the tribunal to recuse itself. So that motion was effectively argued today, and it was dismissed as lacking in merit.
The tribunal has, however, adjourned till March 13th for the nation's electoral body, INEC, listed as the first respondent, to open its defense. While Sylva has already called a total of 52 witnesses before closing his case, many believe that his call for the tribunal members to discontinue hearing his petition over lack of trust suggests the outcome, if not in his favor, might not be accepted. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Obonman.
All right, so there we have it. Court cases upon court cases, like they say. After elections, Nigeria seems to go to the court, and there's this general statement that if you're not happy with the results, go to court. That's exactly what we're seeing as well.
Yeah. And the thing, that struck me with it is Governor Diri saying that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, but I don't feel that way, and I'm sure that, many other people don't feel that way also. The current Nigerian system and the current Nigerian reality, with the judiciary, with the police, with, almost every institution doesn't feel like, an institution that the Nigerian, people can rely on. So he might feel that way, and, it might be the right thing to say, to the cameras, but I don't think a lot of people feel that way, about the judiciary. But, time will tell, how that court case will go, and of course how the election tribunals will go, and we'll see if eventually, of course, is made to remain as governor or kicked out. We'll see. All right, let's move away from the Niger Delta. Governor Abba Kabir Yusuf of Kano State has appealed to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to, as a matter of urgency, consider the reopening of the country's borders for the importation of food in order to alleviate the suffering of the Nigerian masses. The appeal was contained in a statement issued by the governor's spokesperson, Sunusi Baturi Dawakin Tofa, shortly after receiving the Controller General of the Nigerian Customs Service, Adewale Adeni, at Government House in Kano, who had on Saturday said consultations are ongoing for the reopening of the borders, and only President Bola Tinubu had the prerogative to reopen the borders in the country. Well, Governor Yusuf lamented the critical condition of hunger and starvation in the country, which was caused by the rampant hike in the price of commodities in the country, and reiterated that there are calls for border reopening. Joining us now to delve into the conversation is Dr. Boniface Chizie, is the MD CEO, Big Consultancy Services. It's good to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. I'm here on Breakfast Central.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
All right. Well, we've seen what the governor said, and we've seen the calls that have been made. What's your take on reopening the borders, especially now that we can categorically state that there is hunger in the land?
Well, I think the first thing to say, I think it's you can't counter is the fact that border closure is an unusual step to take, and so we have to be very careful in governance. The welfare of the people is what should be of concern to those who are in leadership position. But sometimes in this environment, we don't seem to show that really we're that concerned. I think that's very important. By the time you close the border, you change the life pattern of those near the border, those people who have interacted, across the border, businesses that built up based on the fact that, they transact across the border. So you do it, and it's wrong. And when you look at when we have border, we're talking about building economic space and so on and so forth. You want to remove barriers, so you have ECOWAS. ECOWAS is meant to remove barriers, to movement of people and goods and services. You want to create large markets and places. You want to encourage, people where they have expertise, economies of scale, to be developed, and give some cost benefits to all concerned. And so you want to do that. And you do that because people can now socialize. So if, for instance, Nigerians can go to, say, across to the Republic, to get certain things, and then they have expertise in that area, we expect that what the economies of scale and so on, and what benefits they have would also impact on us here in Nigeria. So border closure, is not something that we should just take whimsically. It's not something that we should just do. It's something that we really have to be very careful to make sure that our objectives in doing that is very clear, and then we set timelines as to what needed to be done. So, but border closures is not the way to go. So, and when you see problems we're having in our environment, the problems we have lately is because of the free fall related to the exchange of the naira. So people look at it, and then people are trying to pass the buck and pass the blame and so on and so forth. This is where they were there before, and we didn't have any crisis. So if we're having those crises, we should try and situate it properly. That's what is happening.
Yeah. Let me also, get your thoughts. Do you think that the Nigerian government has been able to continue to justify to itself the gains of border closure? I remember the former administration, found reasons here and there to justify, the closure of the border. They claimed that rice was now in, massive production of rice, had occurred or started across northern Nigeria and in other parts of the country. But till date, we're in 2024, would you say that they still have gains that they can point to as the benefits of the border closure over time that has made them keep it that way?
Well, sometimes we close borders because we think that we want to stop certain economic activities. So we want to, so for instance, like we did say in your presentation, so we produce some rice and we think that it's being small good, or we have petroleum products and we think it's being small good, and then put up borders and so on and so forth. That's why economists will tell you that it's better to allow the market, to take up that challenge. Administratively, it's tough to do. By the time you start putting, shutting down borders and so on and so forth, you create opportunity for people for rent seeking. So the custom guys will go to town, and then it becomes costlier. Goods will be devised, for those things to move and so on, and it's very difficult to stop. And really, when you were talking about it, I was thinking of going beyond Nigeria, and I think I said, the subcontinent, for instance, like I said earlier on. Then you're concerned because you want development to spread all through the place. And so by the time you begin to do this, you put yourself in a corner, and then the benefits that would accrue to you by the fact that you have a larger space to transact, you would not get it. So whatever benefits has been there, I think they've been overtaken with time. I can't even remember why the borders were shut in the first place. Sometimes we have elections and we shut borders. Okay, so we know because we have elections, and we don't want competition. We want to make sure that both inflation and so on and so forth is not. We don't encourage. We don't enable that. But when you don't have that and start shutting borders because you don't want your products to go across the border, like I said earlier on, you just create opportunity for people to begin to find ways and means to do that. There are people who have built their lives, based on such businesses, such transactions. We must be conscious of that fact as we take decisions. Because you do that, you upset, the pattern which they built over the years.
All right, I'd like us to look at the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and how Nigeria may have reneged in its treaty. Obviously, the borders are supposed to be open to allow free movement and, of course, free trade. But this might have been affected because of the closure of our borders. What impact do you think this would have on neighboring countries? I mean, recently we also saw that some goods were seized right before the president yesterday made a statement that those goods should be released back to the owners as long as they're going to sell them in Nigeria and not take them to Cotonou or wherever. We're starting to see smuggling in little places because people just need to ensure that they're able to take food from point A to point B. What do you think this would mean, especially looking at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement and, of course, the attitude and actions of people in moving goods and items, if possibly smuggling them?
Let me tell you, I thought that I gave President full marks, for asking for the food items to be released. What will have happened eventually is that those food items will be kept there, they will rot, and waste, and so on, and then even some will be taken away. Like I said earlier on, I don't see any benefit, in that respect. I don't know why Nigeria, we don't seem to get our acts right. We don't seem, I would seem to show a bit of confusion, by the way we are, particularly when it comes to continental issues. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement and so on and so forth, we championed it. And when it came to signing the agreement, and we reneged, we didn't sign. I think maybe we just signed not too long ago. And so, but that shouldn't be the case. Nigeria should be the largest economy in Africa. And then, like I said earlier on, we should be conscious of the fact that we have a responsibility, whether we like it or not, to pull the other countries within the sub-region, but pull them up, so that we all have development across board. So this is very important. It's a challenge that's thrust on us by the fact of our position in the continent, the size of our economy in the continent, our population, and so on and so forth. And if we're not doing what we should do, because we are wrong-sighted, we are not holding the right end of the stick, and we're doing things that we shouldn't do. Everybody suffers because of that. So that consciousness has to be there. Nigeria must know that trying to restrain things, control things, and stop them from going across the border has consequences. Sometimes, in fact, they have true benefits. That's what you can say. One can say categorically. But people, like I said earlier on, people have lived, they pattern their lives. And then you can imagine if you're living on the border and you've transacted freely, and suddenly the border is shut. And then sometimes it's not going to be open for the next. What confusion, what that's going to affect your lifestyle, affect what you've done before, affect everything about you. And you cause hardship, you cause pain on people. And then we should be very careful when we take such decisions. We must ask ourselves, what is it we are trying to get? Sometimes you get the feeling that we don't go through that route. We don't say, look, what is this? What are we trying to get? And then is this the right strategy? Is it the right approach, to achieve what are there alternative ways that this could be done? So I think we should begin to do that. And sometimes we take policy decisions and we go to sleep. So as soon as I say the whole thing is forgotten. So nobody knows what is happening. If you take this food lifting of food ban and so on and so forth, if you ask me as an economist, I can't remember when that ban was put in place. And the price was put by the immediate past regime. And you ask me why I can't. I know all we have to do with, foods are being exported. I mean, I saw the United States governor stopping food items from going outside the state and saying that they should go back and sell it in the state. So that was madness. What if there's no market for those goods to be sold in the states? What if those economic agents in the states? What harm is it doing to them? And what harm is it doing to the rest of Nigeria? So you come, and then you create scarcity everywhere. So Nigeria should be the space that should be of concern to all managers of this economy. And when you see such decisions being taken, and you just ask yourself, you can't help asking yourself and say, look, where is this coming from? What sort of logic is driving this decision?
Yeah. Well, I mean, these policies, of course, have been, criticized for a long time. The government, of course, continues to find ways to defend them. But, over time, since, of course, the border closure and other policies, you would expect that there's been other steps that have been taken to maybe curb smuggling, to improve on production of, agricultural production in the country and other things. Do you see that any of it has improved? Do you see that the Nigerian government, if it eventually decides to open the borders after 10 years, will be able to beat its chest and say, in that time that the borders were closed, we achieved this, with curbing smuggling? If you remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a report by Fisayo Shoyombo on a very popular alleged smuggler in the country that was, of course, conniving with the Nigerian Customs Service and the likes, allegedly. So what would we be able to say that we've achieved in that time? Will it be agricultural production? Will it be, better protection of our borders?
I just said to you that, sometimes when we take such decisions, the goals, the objectives are not clearly stated. Like I said earlier on, the commonest one that comes to mind is the fact you say to yourself, we think these things are being exported and so on, make customs are not being paid and so on and so on. That's not the way to go. If for instance, you feel that the border smuggling across the border and so on and so forth, this is leverage on technology, for instance. And if you feel that there's a bill free, the charges are paid, tariffs are paid, and they don't hit the treasury and so on and so forth. You up your market, your game. You up your game. So you bring in technology. You find that we produce oil. Nobody knows can account for that. What happens to the oil we produce? But there are countries in this world where you can't touch an ounce of the oil, and that you can't even try it because there's an alarm. So why can't we? So there are some things we should do. So like I said, if the border has been closed, in fact, for me, it's something that has receded in my consciousness. If the border has been closed for that long, and I've said to myself, I can only just think in general terms, what must have been the cause, the reason why these borders were closed. And I said also in economic management, again, let me repeat, it's not the way to go. So you're trying to create a larger market. You go to Europe, you have their market and so on. A sub-region, have the ECOWAS and sub-region, because there are advantages in doing so. So if you allow a larger space and you allow people to specialize in certain areas because they have certain endowments and so on, then everybody benefits from it because as they leverage on those endowments which they have, and then they produce in a way that is cheaper for everybody, then that should impact on price level. That should impact on the level of inflation within the sub-region. And that should impact on the overall quality of well-being of people in the business, which for me is the ultimate objective of being in government.
All right. I want to thank you so much, MD CEO, Big Consultancy Services, Boniface Chizia. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we've taken a look at the call for the borders to be reopened. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. God bless.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on now to another very, very interesting story. The Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, says it will embark on a 7-day warning strike over alleged discrimination in payment of 4 months withheld salaries. Mohammed Ibrahim, the national president of SANU, disclosed this in a communique issued at the end of the new union's 47th regular National Executive Council NEC meeting on Monday in Abuja, stated that the 4 months withheld salaries arose from the nationwide strike action embarked upon by all unions in the public universities in the country. Well, according to him, NEC had frowned at the latest action of government, which excluded SANU and other non-teaching university-based unions from the payment of the 4 months withheld salaries, thereby approving a 1-week warning strike in conjunction with sister unions in Joint Action Committee JAC of Non-Academic Staff Union of Universities, NASU, if the directive is not implemented.
Joining us is Comrade Mohammed Ibrahim, the National President, SANU, and the National Internal Auditor, NLC. Good morning, Comrade. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. Kindly, make this clear for us. When you say that SANU has not been receiving its, salaries, that of course it was promised by the government, help us understand exactly what has gone on here.
Well, thanks for this opportunity to talk to Nigerians on this platform. Recall that in March 2022, SANU and NASU, after having a deadlock, discussing with government on our issues, decided to go on strike, March 27th precisely. And we've been on strike until to 24th of August, same 2022, when we suspended the strike after engagements with the then government of Muhammadu Buhari. We met with the Minister of Education, Mala Adamu then, and some officials of government, and agreed that we needed to suspend because they agreed to accede to some of our demands. Some of those demands as at then and still running is the non-implementation of the salary increase, which government offered 23.5% and 35% for university workers, the non-release of 50 billion naira and allowances for workers in the universities, the dissolution of governing councils of federal universities and some state universities, the non-payment and non-release of the stabilization funds for the university systems. So those were some of the issues that actually got us talking with government. And then most importantly, when we signed to agree to suspend, was that there was going to be non-victimization of any of our members that took part in the strike. That was clearly signed by us in the unions, and then the government side led by the Minister of Education, the Permanent Secretary, the Executive Secretary of NUC. So from that August till date, our salaries were restored in September 2022, and then 4 months were seized. Government, that administration elapsed in May 2023. So we've been agitating since then that there was need to release, that amount of for the salaries of workers in SANU and NASU. Remember also ASU and NAT also had their salaries stopped, within the same period. This present administration, in October 2023, the president gave a waiver saying that the government has agreed to pay the withheld salaries. That was clearly contained in a press release signed by the spokesman of the president. And in November 2023, we met with the Minister of Education, the current minister, Professor Mamman Tahir, and the Minister of State, Dr. Sununu, and the Permanent Secretary, and we discussed on those issues that were still nagging, on the tables. And part of it was also the release of the 4-month salaries. And they did confirm that the president, had approved for the repayment of the withheld salaries in November 2023. And till date, SANU hasn't got those payments made. However, our colleagues in ASU got theirs paid 2 weeks ago. And we could not understand the rationale behind this divide and rule. And that was what led to the agitation and the protest letters we wrote to government. Specifically, we wrote the Chief of Staff to the President, Honorable Bajabiamila, and then the Minister of Education, drawing their attention to the injustice meted on our members. And we needed them to understand that there was an error of some sort. So no replies have been received since then. We had made personal contacts. They did assure us that it was an error, that it was going to be rectified. But we could not understand. This is the third week. Nothing has been done. So we met at the level of different organs. NASU had their meeting. SANU, we had our meeting, the National Executive Committee meeting in Akure, Thursday, Friday last week. And our members felt that we could no longer, take this for any reason. So we gave this ultimatum that if by Monday the 18th, nothing is done, we are going to shut down the system, as far as our members are concerned.
Thank you so much for that detailed breakdown of how you've started and how it's going, especially looking at where you're coming from. It's been a long time. So help us understand, these salaries is just for 4 months, right? It's just 4 months, or it's more than 4 months, right?
Yes.
But in line with that, many have said that, would you rather get into a dialogue again as regards just shutting down just for 4 months?
Well, it may sound just, but looking at the economic situation in the country, keeping someone away for a salary of a month is enough to bring down the roof. But we've been patient enough. And what is even intriguing and amazing and surprising is that the president of the country has given the approval, and that our colleagues in the academics were paid. And we are more in number. We are the ones populated by professionals. We are the ones oiling the engine, for the administration of the university. Remember that we are in bursary, we are in registry, we are in works, we are in fiscal planning, we are in security. We are in everything about the university apart from teaching. So how would they have done this very expensive job of leaving us behind, and that we have lost so many members as a result of this non-payment? We also have people who have been sent out of their rented apartments, whose children were not able to go back to school and then some of people who also took loans from banks, and because of that 4 months suspension of payment of salaries, they had issues with their banks because, interest, kept piling up, and, banks do not tolerate, non-payment of your debts. So those are the reasons that we felt that we can no longer keep quiet. And worse is that we had written to remind them that this is an issue that is besetting us, and nobody seems to be saying anything officially.
Yeah. Can you share with us, if you can, what the average salary scale is like for SANU and NASU members? What are the figures that we're talking about here? Because I mean, from my understanding, it's not like it's even, that much. Your salary scale is not the highest. So what figures are we looking at here on the average? And also, would you confirm that you've not received any feedback from the current Minister of Education?
Well, to give you figures may not be possible because of the numbers we are talking about. In SANU alone, we have close to about 50,000 members. In NASU, they may be even more. And in SANU, we have all registrars in the universities, all bursars, all directors, all senior members of staff from level 6 to 15. Ours may not be as fat as that of CBN and probably your media outfit, but I can assure you it's not a chicken feed. And also the fact that we had notified government, and our strike was based on following due process, because the law says that you must notify your employer before you go on strike, and there must be a deadlock. And those were the things. And then we also signed with them that there will be no non-victimization of anybody for taking part. And what is even more important than having the commander-in-chief and president of the country saying that he has given waiver to release that money. And to tell you whether we have received any feedback from the Minister of Education, officially we have not. But I did mention on this platform that we had engaged, at a personal level. But it has been stories of promises upon promises. So why would ASU members, even though we are not competing, we are not feeling bad that they are paid, but if you are working in the same environment, why would this selective justice be meted, and then you expect people to keep quiet?
Was there any reason given for the failure to pay, for those 4 months?
If there was reason, then that would have translated into response of the protests we made, or the letters or inquiries we have sent to them. But mute is the issue. Mute is the answer. We have not been responded to officially from the letters sent to draw the attention of the non-payment. So this is the story. We feel that, there's this popular saying that government understands only one thing, and that's the language of going on strike. So we would have also decided to go on an indefinite strike. But like I said, administrators, we've had need that we will have to show them. And some of our parents have been in such universities. So it won't be fair to just wake up and then say, okay, we're shutting indefinitely. But the warning strike for 7 days is actually to pinch them and let them know that we are also people that matter.
Yeah. And of course, you're saying, after the 7-day warning strike, there's a possibility you will go on an indefinite strike.
Well, for a labor leader or labor leaders or any labor union, what you have is a toolbox. And within that, you have so many instruments: warning strike, protest, indefinite strike, picketing, and so on. So this time around, our union has decided to say, let's go for 7 days warning strike. But if at the when this one elapses, we are not ruling out any further stringent, maybe even more difficult situations that we will have to decide on things that we need to do, in the case of taking our destinies into our own hands.
All right. Thank you so much, National President SANU and National Internal Auditor, Comrade Mohammed Ibrahim, for joining us and breaking it down. I mean, we do hope that positive results come out of this one. And hopefully, since the president has approved, let's hope that the monies will indeed come forth. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for this opportunity, and I appreciate the good job you've been doing.
Thank you. All right. So that conversation is one conversation that everyone is indeed talking about. And no doubt we do hope that something will be done very, very soon. But then again, let's also remind you that there is another very, very critical story that Nigerians are reacting to. It's got to do with the fact that bandits have requested for allegedly demanding 40 trillion naira, Osaugi. Yeah. That's what they're asking for. They're also asking for 11 Hilux vans and 150 motorcycles in ransom before they get to release the 16 people kidnapped from the Goningora area of Kaduna. And that's what they said. So on February 28, 2024, recall, bandits indeed killed 2 residents of Anguwan Auta to Goningora and kidnapped several others. Now that's not all. This also led to residents of the area on February 29 mounted a roadblock on the Kaduna-Abuja highway for hours to protest against the killing and, of course, the abduction.
Yeah. Now, of course, according to a community leader, John Yusuf, the bandits contacted the victims' families and made their demands. He also added that the kidnapping incident happened twice within a 4-day interval, and the establishment of a military base that did not tackle the criminal operations in the area. And, I mean, if you're asking for 40 trillion naira for 16 people, imagine what the people who's kidnapped 200 and almost 300 school children are going to ask for. Nigeria's budget for 2023, I believe, was 28 point something trillion. So, of course, for 16 people, they're asking for more than Nigeria's last annual budget, which is obviously a joke. I don't think anybody believes that these are real. But, for me, it really just tells how much audacity that these persons have, because they've basically been allowed, somehow, some way to run wild and to run free with the lives of Nigerian citizens for the last long while. So they can play around with lives, they can take 16 people and do, as they like, make frivolous, demands that even, where else would you hear about a 40 trillion naira demand for 16 people that were kidnapped? No, you wouldn't hear of that. Nigeria doesn't have 40 trillion naira. Nigeria doesn't even have money to fund its own budget because of 40 trillion naira to give to bandits. So it's obviously at a stage where they see it as a joke. And of course, that includes those who are even reporting the story. They see it as a joke that, you can demand 40 trillion naira. Of course, I'm also seeing reports of Sheikh Gumi. I'm not sure if it's the same story, but I think it's the same one, offering to negotiate on behalf of the federal government, of course, mediate between the bandits and the federal government. It's such a joke. And it's mostly because we failed. There's no other way to, explain how much we have failed to protect Nigerian lives and property, how the Nigerian government has failed. Nobody is going to argue against it, that the Nigerian government and security agencies and every institution of government has completely failed to protect Nigerian lives and property. And that's why we are where we are today. The people who have kidnapped 300 school children in Borno, I believe, would demand 100 trillion naira. Or maybe even more. I don't know which other figures. Maybe 400 trillion naira will be their demand at this point to get those people back. But it's once again, it's the audacity that they have because they've been allowed to run free and run wild. There's nobody challenging them. Every now and then you hear about the Nigerian army, attacked, a bandit hideout. 300 were killed, 20 were killed. But it's such a joke because you can't keep doing that and you still see absolutely no change. There's no improvement in the security situation. They still kidnap at will. They still hold on to territories. They do these things freely. I saw a video on social media, on X, a couple of days ago of an attack, a just concluded attack, and they were on their motorcycles holding children that they had taken. It was such a heartbreaking story. One of the children was crying. They're giving the child water, but on the floor you could see, the dead bodies of people who had just been murdered. And these are Nigerian citizens. We have failed, and we have failed in ways that we can't even describe it. And there's nothing else, and I don't think that there's anything else that should be topmost priority. There's no conversation that should happen in the country today that should not be about these people that have been kidnapped. The Senate president, the vice president, the president himself, governors, there's no conversation that is more important than that. But instead, we're still playing politics. We're still playing politics with Nigerian lives at this point in time.
It's a long conversation. Don't forget as well that the governor had debunked rumors, according to him, that he had initiated moves to negotiate and also get a private negotiator. But then again, these conversations will continue. If you just tuned in, this is Breakfast Central. Let's bring to you a recap of the stories we've brought to you so far this first hour. Kano governor calls for reopening of land borders. We did look very, very deep into this conversation and the possibilities.
Yes, and of course, NASU declares 7 days warning strike over withheld salaries. We, of course, just spoke with the representative.
Bandits demanding 40 trillion naira for 16 abducted Kaduna residents. Possible, or is it a farce? Let's bring to you what's coming up next for the second hour here on Breakfast Central. The front pages where you can be part of. Don't forget to start calling as well.
And also we'll be sharing with you what Nigerians are saying, some of the big stories and of course things happening on social media, and also what's happening later today on News Central Television.
It's from next week, I mean.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
How are they?
We're seeing the drama. There's always drama. From a risco to banditry and to sue Buhari finally for 30 trillion ways and means.
Drama, no, they finish for Nigeria.
They finish.
And now bandits are demanding 40 trillion naira.
Small money, no? That's small money.
Kuna kallon News Central TV.
The front pages of the dailies is what we're going to look at, and we will go straight into it. We do have our guest who's joining us. Thank you so much for being here. Mechi Ikechukwu, thank you always for being here.
The pleasure is mine.
All right. Just in case you do not know, Will, he's the publisher of the Leech newspaper, authoritative, and of course you can get every single thing that you need concerning Nigeria, breaking news and the likes. But then again, he's here to help us look through the big stories on the front page. And we're going to start off with our very first newspaper this morning. It is The Punch. Let's see what the front page of The Punch looks like this morning. It says, parties demand three... Just before we came back, we're talking about everybody shouting of trillion. And here it is, another one. Parties demand 3.7 trillion naira padding probe. Northern senators disown Ningi. There's a very interesting part to that story. But Ningi insists. He even said, I don't mind if I'm suspended, and then they're tinkering with the idea of suspending him for 6 months. Anyway, he insists on 3.7 trillion naira allegations. Senators APC, PDP seeks sanction and investigation. Don't forget, it's all about the 28 trillion naira budget brouhaha. Let's look at that story first. Let's look at that without taking all the stories and wasting time. Let's just focus on some of the major. Let's start off with this one. What's your thoughts on this, sir?
Well, the Senate will sit on plenary today, and hopefully they will look at it. I pray they do it in open session without going into closed door section. Of course, Abdul Ningi, who, by the way, is a ranking senator, was a member of the House of Representatives before he moved to the upper chamber. I think he was there as the deputy majority leader from 2011 to 2015. Then he's come back now from Bauchi State. And Abdul Ningi is not a very young man. He was born in April 1960, so he should know what he's talking about. He's a member of the Appropriation Committee. He granted an interview to the BBC in Hausa, where he made some claims. The most important thing is that he said about 3.5 or 3.7 trillion in the 2024 budget cannot be traced. There are nothing. You can't attach it to projects, no location, no nothing. So that out of the 28.7 trillion naira budget that was passed and signed into law by President Bola Tinubu, 25 trillion, you can account for it. But he said there is this 3.7 trillion that nobody can account for. Of course, there is an uproar, a brouhaha. He's the chairman of the Northern Senators Forum. So people said he spoke on behalf of Northern senators. But he has come to clarify that he spoke for himself, except for the fact that also the Northern Senators Forum got a consultant, if we go by what he's saying, which he also re-emphasized yesterday, that they, as a forum, they brought a consultant. And what he's claiming is also part of what the consultant has been able to find out. Now, you see, when some of us say that Nigeria is a huge crime scene, it's not that somebody is out there to disparage his country just for the fun of talking. Don't forget, about how many years ago, when this guy was the speaker. No, the guy from Bauchi State also.
I could see the face.
Assembly.
I'm just.
I will remember. I think it was the 9th Assembly.
Yes.
It was the 8th Assembly. Dogara.
Okay.
Dogara had this also issue with the man who was the chairman of the appropriation committee then, who pointedly accused him of padding the budget for that year. How was it resolved? Of course, the guy was suspended and all that. But so I don't see much coming out of this. Ningi said he's not afraid of being suspended. Maybe not. He's a member of the opposition, a political party. But the truth of the matter is that Nigerian budgets have always been toyed with in a way that does not make any sense whatsoever. And you know, budgets ought to be a guideline for the government within the fiscal year of what to do and what not to do. In Nigeria, nobody adheres to it. It is a ritual that people just go there between the executive and the National Assembly, pass the budget for whatever it is worth. Nobody is sure of even implementation. Under Buhari, we had budgets that so underperformed that not up to 30%.
Yeah.
So what is it all about? If there is a bit of transparency in this investigation, perhaps what Ningi is saying might be proved. We have instances of people just putting things in the budget that are neither here nor there. At the end of the day, how come every year the same line items are repeated? This year, they will tell you 100 computers, now for instance, for so and so office. In the next year's budget, 100 computers will also be there. Do computers expire their lifespan within 1 year? So it's a whole lot of mess that we are going through.
Also bear in mind that this is also not a budget that they can even fund. So when we're talking about an additional 3-point-something trillion naira, you know, they initially couldn't even, they have not even been able to, you know, clearly state how the 28 trillion will be funded in the first place.
They intend to borrow. And the other day, just like we were discussing last week, the CBN governor, Nakadoso, warned
about not borrowing anymore.
That if we continue on this borrowing spree, we're going to run into a hell of a crisis. But that's about the only chance they have. Now they increased or they removed fuel subsidy. Ideally, they said they are reckoning more naira now. Where is it going to? Yeah. The former CBN governor the other day asked, where is the money? And nobody seems to answer that question.
Yeah. Anyway, just to remind our viewers, the phones are available. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you can call the numbers on your screen. All right. Let's know your thoughts on Senator Ningi's allegations, the reaction from the National Assembly, and of course from the presidency, and of course, if you think that this will turn into anything. Sure. We have a bit more on the Punch, and I think we can also share others.
Talking about the Punch as well. At the top there. Federal government laments blackout despite 65% subsidy warns this goes. Yesterday, the Minister of Power had a little presser in Abuja yesterday where he was talking tough and it was blowing hot. Revoking licenses seems to be the way, and that's exactly what they are looking at. Tourism. UN begins Lagos Abuja Airport's security audit. There's a video of the Aviation Minister, Honorable Festus Keyamo, talking about the different flight carriers and so on and so forth. Well, that's another story. But then again, let's quickly bring back this conversation very quickly. Let's look at the video where the Senator Ningi indeed exonerated himself of a few statements he made, and most importantly, also went ahead to speak deeply of what he meant by the padding of the budget. Take a look.
I said Bola Ahmed Tinubu is implementing 2 budgets. There was no time. At no time did I say Bola Tinubu was biased against the North. The House of Virgin is there. At no time did I say Bola Tinubu is implementing 25%, 25 trillion budget. The House of Virgin is there. But I'm here to attempt to summarize to you, members of the National Assembly Press Corps, what I said in my Hausa interview about a week today. I was speaking on the state of the nation. And amongst other things, I lamented how the North found itself at a receiving end.
Well, there you have it from Senator Ningi. Now, let's quickly get someone from Port joining us. Dr. Friday, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, welcome. Go ahead.
Honestly, I have been listening to the conversation. Of course, it's one of the TV shows that I like listening to. The issue of borrowing in Nigeria is so complicated that we find it difficult to actually understand the essence of the borrowing. Because if one borrows, of what purpose is it borrowed? Now you see Nigeria or different government comes in and all that, just like our visitor there has been talking about, does a computer expire within 1 year? So what are we borrowing for? There must be a measure. These things must be accountable for. We must say, okay, if we are borrowing, this is exactly what we want to use this money that we want to borrow to do. And we should be able to monitor to ensure that whatever has been borrowed is exactly what the money has been used for. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we only hear the borrowing at the periphery. Now the money comes in. What has the money been used for? No one can actually talk about it. No one can actually identify exactly that this is what this money that has been borrowed has been used for. Then what about our internally generated revenue? What about all the money that comes in and all that? Nigeria seems to be so careless, sorry to use this word, we seem to be so careless, we seem to be unconcerned about what the pains of the common man on the street is. Nigeria is so tolerant, so that just a simple road that you have borrowed money to do will begin to celebrate a government. We'll begin to appreciate and say thank you for all this. But that is a fundamental function of the government to do. We don't even need to say thank you for that. Now, do we need to borrow? Look at our banking system. If you go to make any transaction, you are deducted here and there. This one will tell you it is internally generated revenue from the federal government. This one will tell you it is CBN governor. You don't even know, okay, all the money that has been generated, you don't even know what it is used for. The one they will tell you they have recovered from looted money, you cannot say for sure that this is what the money has been used for. Yes, people are talking about borrowing. And borrowing to do what? Borrowing to fund food, borrowing to fund their food, borrowing to fund their careless expenses and all that. And it is just uncalled for. I believe the government knows exactly what to do. But the most important thing is, are they willing to actually do it? There is no need borrowing anywhere. There is no need. What have we used the ones borrowed for to do? What can we really say that has been achieved with the ones borrowed? People are suffering, and the pain is becoming more excruciating, more than we can ever imagine. Let us become more willing and forget the issue of political affiliations and all that and that.
These are obviously, Dr. Friday, thanks a lot for sharing. These are questions that the National Assembly you would expect would be asking. But, you know, let's also, we have a time constraint, so let's go to another newspaper. Let's go to the Tribune this morning, see if there's major stories you should find there. Northern senators disown Ningi as crack widens. Sad that we're making this a northern versus southern or eastern issue. We're talking about mismanagement of funds here. Should not have anything to do with where the person is from. 3.7 trillion naira not traced in budget, Ningi insists. Arrest and charge Ningi for breach of peace, Jimo Ibrahim says. 4 days after abduction of our children, kidnappers yet to make contact, says parents. Bandits invade Plateau Market, kills 7. So it's a free-for-all at this point. Also on the Nigerian Tribune this morning, UK bans overseas health workers from bringing dependents. State should pay wage award now. And also kudos, Knox as Oshun appoints new OWA of Igbajo. We can also find bottom of the page there. All right, I think these are the most relevant stories there. Quickly, let's get your thoughts on arresting Ningi and, of course, the security situation across Nigeria at this point. There's, you know, of course, the story on bandits and abduction there. Well,
with all due respect, I don't take...
Right. Just before you go on, let's hear from Ima. Good morning.
With all due just before you go, let's hear from Ima.
We need you to turn the volume of your TV down or turn the TV off.
We need you to turn the volume of your TV down.
All right. We'll have Ima call back here.
A bit of a struggle.
Yes. Yeah. I said with all due respect, I don't take Jimo Ibrahim as serious, so I don't think it is worth my while wasting my time. What is it? What breach of peace or what is he talking about? Look. Let's go back to what the issues are. Not people who are just playing to the gallery. I think Ningi also replied him. Ningi said that he'd be glad that if he's arrested, he's not going to be arrested for fraud or for anything other than speaking his mind and raising alarm over something that happened. And I think that's a very pointed response to Jimo Ibrahim. So, that said, look, the news broke yesterday that terrorists are now demanding 40 trillion naira for 16 people that were kidnapped somewhere in Kaduna State in February. Not only 40 trillion naira, they were also demanding for 10 Hilux vehicles and about 100 and so motorcycles. The tragedy of that is that the bandit economy or economy of banditry in Nigeria is now larger than Nigeria's.
I know, right?
I mean, that's
Paul. Good morning, Paul. That's actually very funny. Yeah. Morning, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, concerning the bandit. Good morning, everyone. Concerning the bandit, and we are expecting too much from our leaders, because I still believe there must be something wrong with our mind. Something happened 10 years ago or 10 years plus. The same thing is repeating now. The same statement we have been making last 10 years. The same thing we're still saying today concerning both pardon, concerning both kidnapping, concerning both everything that concerns Nigeria. Are we not thinking that there's something wrong that we need to do? This is not matter of change of leadership. We started Boko Haram right from Obasanjo time. We are still saying the same thing. And these are human factors, the human problems that needed to be solved by leaders. So I believe that every government that has been existing when all these things are happening, they are part of it. Because you can't kidnap 300 students without, how do you convert them? I'm an usher in a church, 200 people in a big church. It's a very big congregation. That a human head is very big. I can't understand why we continue saying this particular thing. I'm suggesting that we have to break down this country, restructure this country, rebuild this country, because there are a set of people who don't want this country to move forward. And we should look at it that way, not matter of head of state, because it cannot work and it's not working. Nigeria, for now, is not working. Thank you.
Yeah, Paul is right, and that was where I was going to. Now, the 2024 budget of Nigeria is 28.7 trillion. Bandits are demanding 40 trillion. It's a morbid joke, but that shows you where we are. Nigeria is not working. The ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, if bandits over and over again will go to a school, take 200 and something pupils or students, and just walk away into thin air. Any government or any country that cannot guarantee its territorial integrity is not worth being called a country. There are many places in this country that you can go to that are being governed by non-state actors. Yeah. There are places in Borno State that farmers will have to pay to bandits in order to go to their farms. So Nigeria is not working. On the 18th of this month, the Patriots are organizing a national conference. Of course, the Patriots is now, since Professor Ben Nwabeze died, Professor Ben Nwabeze used to be the chairman of the Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah. The Patriots is now led by Chief Emeka Anyoko, former Secretary General of the Commonwealth. They are organizing a conference in honor of their late chairman, Professor Ben Nwabeze, on the 18th. And the theme of the conference is restructuring. Professor Ben Nwabeze was harping on the issue of restructuring until he died. I remember the last interview I did with him. He said Nigeria has a chance of surviving, but only if it is restructured. The way Nigeria is now is not working and it can't work. Okay. Anybody who tells you otherwise is lying.
All right, from Jigawa State, Emmanuel, good morning.
Emmanuel, are you there?
Concerning this banditry that we'll always be complaining. You know, we have so many people that are causing problems in Nigeria. Like so, to me, I can even say that all these ex-military that are alive, those ones that know about the coup, they are the one planning all this kind of wickedness for Nigeria to die. That's what I see. So because they have a experience concerning coup, they know how to mobilize people that will go to churches, go to mosques, go to markets, and bring destruction to people. And I can tell you, in my place now, bandits are there every day killing, attacking. The governor has never spoken anything concerning it. So we complain. There's no any reaction. Our people, they cannot defend themselves without the power of the government. So now what I'm trying to say here, I can mention some people. If those people will wipe away from Nigeria, I'm telling you, peace will be restored in Nigeria. One, Tiwa Danjuma. Second, General Gusau and IBB and Abdulsalam. All those people, if they leave this country today, I'm telling you, peace will be restored in this country. I am sure.
Anyway, those are your thoughts. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Just to mention that those are Emmanuel's thoughts indirectly. I mean, anyway, looking at our time, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to add any other thing.
We need to sit down and seriously address the issues that are confronting us. These issues are fundamental. If we continue the way we are going, we will go nowhere. And Nigeria, I'm afraid, is heading to a disaster. A country where you can't wake up in the morning. In those days, for those of us that are from the eastern part of this country, if you are going every December, you would rather drive than fly because you want to see the countryside. Now you can't.
Now you don't go at all.
Please hold that thought. Let's
not even the mode of translation. Now you don't even go at all. All right. Well, we'll take a short break. When we will, of course, continue and wrap this up in a bit right after this.
Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. The front pages is what we are looking at. We do have a caller who joins us this morning. Richard, thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead with your contribution. Richard, are you there? All right. Okay. Anyway, hopefully Richard gets to join us back. What's your final summation so far so good now that we've seen some of the front pages of the papers this morning?
My final solution is that we need to sit down and decide on what kind of country that we want. Like I said earlier, what we have now is not working. And unfortunately, people are so selfish. Nobody thinks about Nigeria. And that is why even those who were shouting restructuring yesterday, like our president today, when they have the opportunity, he is now in the presidency, he's no longer talking about restructuring.
Yeah.
So people are selfish. Those who are in opposition today are saying what they are saying because they want to get in there. When they get in there, they forget about what they said yesterday and continue with the same status quo that has failed all of us. But we need to think seriously. Nigeria is not working. A country where people can go to a school, take 287 pupils and students, and vanish into the thin air, that is not a country worth the name.
Good morning, Tony from Benue.
Hello, good morning.
Morning, welcome, go ahead.
Okay. I want to speak on issue of Senate and pardon. To me, Nigeria Senate and House of Reps, they have disappointed us. This issue of pardon has been there for a long time. And I think the work of legislators is to checkmate what the executive is doing. I don't know where they got power from to add from the budget that executive they have made. And this thing has been taking on for a long time. Executive will prepare budget, then legislator, they will be adding and removing. I don't know. But it's for their own selfish interest. But to me, they have disappointed us because all these things they are doing is not for our benefit. Because year in, year out, you see them, the budget and all these things, one road will be putting in budget for almost 5 years. The same road, the same money will be putting into one road. At the end, nothing will be done there. They have disappointed us, and it's quite unfortunate. Good morning.
Good morning. Tony doesn't sound happy. I'm sure he also is reacting from a place where many Nigerians are equally seated.
Yeah.
Anyway, that will do. That's all we're going to take on the front pages today. Most importantly, I want to say thank you so much. Your points we're going to take home as well is the fact that we all need to sit down and look at it categorically. Hopefully, we don't know when that will happen. Maybe this year, maybe next year, and maybe to bring about a solution. Hopefully. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you. All right, stick around. When we come back after the break, we'll take a look at what you are saying. For those who could not call, there's some of you who are online and you're reacting to these stories. What Nigerians are saying will be up next after this break. Stay with us. It's still Breakfast Central here on News Central. Let's see what Nigerians are saying, how you are reacting on the social media space. How netizens are indeed reacting to the big stories that are coming out from the front pages here on News Central and, of course, here on our subsequent news bulletin. But let's start off with the one that everyone is talking about. Chairman of the Northern Senators Forum, Abdul Ningi, seems not to have his name clear of in the news. Well, guess what? He has indeed cleared the 3 trillion naira budget padding controversy. Now, in an interview he had during the weekend, he also came forth to distance himself from accusing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of running a dual budget, criticizing Tinubu's spokesperson Bayo Nanuga as a liar. Well, unfazed by potential Senate suspension, Ningi stands firm on his statement. He says even if he's going to go on a 6-month suspension, he doesn't mind. He just needs to stand for the truth as long as he is not going on suspension because he stole funds. That's a strong statement there. But how are Nigerians reacting to this story ever since it broke? And how are Nigerians reacting to the fact that budget padding seems to be a thing, but now it's made a return on the limelight? Let's go straight to the tweets and find out what you are saying. I'm starting off with the first one. Choco Berry National says, Baba said he was forced back. Well, if you ever think that these guys are concerned about the people, please rethink again. He's only speaking up because they're not part of the people taking the lion's share of the national cake. The earlier we, in brackets, he puts the people, that is, Nigerians, start learning how to use these set of people, the better for us. Okay, so he's saying that Ningi is not speaking out of concern for national interest, but he's speaking out of concern for personal interest. Mr. Underscore I'm a Siko says, now when issues like this happen, you go no say some people did that house as Senate. And I agree. There's so many names you would get to hear whenever you see stories like this, and you wonder, okay, I've not heard of this name before in the Senate. Another one, Ovia 14 says, Nigeria's parliamentarians are the same irrespective of party affiliations. They only call out thievery when it doesn't favor them. Okay, what do you think? What are your thoughts as well? Do you agree with him? Let's see another tweet very quickly to see what Nigerians are saying concerning this budget padding story. What did you say when budget was being padded annually under Buhari? That's a question that begs for an answer. Did you say anything? And finally, 2024, we are still talking about budget padding and, of course, the disappointed emoji. Like, how? Who's still talking about budget padding in 2024? And come to think of it, countries like UK, the United States, and the likes, many would say, okay, once in a while you do have issues of padding, but are you sure? Do you hear of budget padding in this era, this time, when we're talking about building, massive infrastructure and the likes? But here, we're talking about budget padding in 2024. Anyway, that's it. Let's go to the second story and see how you are reacting. Well, shortly after Nigeria barred health workers from traveling abroad for leave, the UK government followed suit, announcing restrictions on international health and, of course, care workers, preventing them from bringing dependents on work visas. The UK Home Office indeed revealed this on Monday, framing the move as a pivotal part of its strategy for substantial migration reduction. And if you do not know, when the Japa syndrome in quotes was high, everybody was going with their family members. And I bet you too, watching this program, your brother or sister left with their families, especially those in the healthcare sector, not those who went through schooling. But how are Nigerians reacting to this? Well, this one, Daddy Dumininu says, we need to fix Nigeria. It's about time. Because if we fix Nigeria, we don't need to japa. And Moses Hongbeme says they should even deport all Nigerians so that we can face our issues. Abba, Moses, deport, really? After all the plans and strategy? It doesn't work like that. They cannot just deport all Nigerians. Aeropec says, let's join hands to fix Nigeria. Japa is not going to favor everyone. And I absolutely agree, because regardless of whatever happens, like they say, home is home. And that takes us to the next tweet to see what the other person says reacting to this. He says, I blame Mom. Does he blame UK Prime Minister? The answer, no. And then he says, if not for bad leadership, waiting with a fine up and down. Think about that. That should hit deep. And Gaboski says, sooner or later, everybody will stay put in their country to create what they need and never to go for another man's own. And if you think about it critically, that is absolutely right. If they stay put, of course, everything will work out fine. And let's take a final one. No place like home, puts the Nigerian flag, says, but if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? A quote from the Holy Book. He then goes on to say, we therefore have to protect our own, because that's all we've got. And that's all the tweets, and that's how a cross-section of Nigerians on the social media space are taken from X, taken from Instagram, taken from Facebook, and others are reacting to the two big stories that we brought forth this morning on what Nigerians are saying. Osarage is also here, and then again, your thoughts. We're not going to talk on Ningi's story. Let's talk about the UK. What are your thoughts on this? Nigerians have said that it's a case of, Nigerians had predicted that this would happen, because at some point we started seeing a little bit of changes. It just seemed that the monies was indeed needed in order to stabilize the UK economy. And now that that has been done, the UK is saying, listen, now we also need to stabilize our population, so we need to cut down.
Yeah. I think just to chip in on the Ningi one also, the guy who said, it's when certain things happen that that some people are in the National Assembly, which is very true. A lot of people didn't know about Senator Ningi until yesterday. But with regards to the UK, it's painful, it's heartbreaking, seeing that, this is what Nigerians have to deal with, right? It sounds insulting even. Yeah. To the Nigerian people who have, of course, done their absolute best to flee, their country. Because I know that it's targeted mostly, I believe it's targeted mostly at Nigerians. They're the ones who have, make a large percentage of those numbers who, of course, move to the UK and, of course, want to move their dependents also. But, of course, you think about the stress that you go through. First of all, to try to get a visa, People do all sorts, sell their property, take loans, do whatever it is to raise the money that they need to make those trip, or that trip rather, to the UK. And of course, the United Kingdom the UK government will, take advantage of it, of how desperate you are. They need to fill up numbers. They need people to do care work.
Yeah.
They need people to do work that their own citizens will not do, because if you ask about their citizens, a lot of them would describe them as very lazy. They wouldn't do those jobs, so they use you to, to do all those jobs. And when they feel like they've reached a certain quota, they change those laws, and make those adjustments in their laws and stop you from coming or stop you from bringing family members. I know that they had a point that the number, I remember a couple of months ago, they had a point that the number of citizens that were coming compared to the citizens or the number of citizens or applications that they were seeing compared to the citizens that were there. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
there was such a variance.
Citizens coming in.
Exactly, that there was such a variance because it seemed like there was more people coming with dependents than those who actually come into school. I know that they pointed that out, but the fact is, these laws will be adjusted or will be changed when they feel like they've reached a certain quota. Same thing with the Canadian government. By the time they fill up the number of people that they're bringing in as electricians, as plumbers, as care workers or whatever, then they change their laws and reduce it. And of course, you have less exit routes to those places. The Nigerians start going to Australia, going to Finland.
They're on their way there already now.
Yeah, so we would always find a way out. But the core is, Nigeria, just like Mr. Michi said, is not working the way it currently is structured. And that's why people in their 40s will throw away a career that they've built for the last 20 years, just because they need a fighting chance at a better life.
Very, very, I always worry about that. After building a life of 20 years,
a career,
30 years, a career,
family, yes.
And then you throw it all away
out and go to some very, very cold city in Canada to start all over again. To start all over again, to adjust, because of course those cities, at least if you work, you'll be able to pay your house rent, you'll be able to afford a decent car, you'll be able to take your kids to school just by being busy, by working. But here, the mentality of the average Nigerian here, you need to work and work and work and pack as much money as possible, because your average income will not afford you those basic things, which is healthcare, housing, education. Your average and feeding. Your average income will not. So what Nigerians, the mentality is, no matter how much I earn, I need to continue to gather and gather and gather. It's painful.
Yeah, it's painful. It's painful. Anyway, that's all we're going to take today here on this particular What Nigerians Are Saying. And on that note, let's remind you of some other programs that are coming up later today here on News Central, so that you do not miss it for anything.
Yes, 10 a.m. West African time, Jasiri starts here on News Central TV. And at 1 p.m. in the game, much later, 5 p.m. West African time, one slot comes your way.
That's all we have for you today on Breakfast Central. It's been fantastic, especially starting off with a conversation from the SANU and NASU going for a warning strike, 7-day warning strike, and the reasons for that. We also did look at the closure of Nigerian borders, how it affects the country, and of course, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
All right. And it's time for us to say goodbye. We're going to be back here again tomorrow morning on News Central, of course, Breakfast Central. Thanks to all those who also join us via our phone lines from different parts of Nigeria. We appreciate it. Join us again tomorrow morning. I am Osaogi Ogbawa.
And I'm Joe Hansen. Have a great day.